Welcome to the show, Kiné. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm great. It's a beautiful morning, and I love having conversations about love and money. So we're in
Me
the
too.
we're on the right team, I think. So,
Yes.
could you tell us a little bit about what financial therapy is? I think that I've heard of marriage counseling, and we've heard of other things, but financial therapy, obviously, that's a very interesting topic. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. So the way that I administer financial therapy, it is very close to marriage counseling because I am a therapist. Now, you don't have to be a therapist to be a financial therapist,
Mm.
because there are people in the Financial Therapy Association that are one or the other. They were therapists and then they decided to add financial therapy to their practice, or they were financial advisors in some sort of way. You know how they have a bunch of titles for financial advisors,
Mhm.
and they decided that they understood couples needing help outside of the numbers.
Mhm.
And so they went into financial therapy. And so that's to give you a background on who a financial therapist is.
Mhm.
And now let me answer your actual question. So, so financial therapy is reconciling your emotions around money to improve your relationship with money.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, as a couple, improving your relationship with money also improves your relationship as a couple because it allows you to communicate better. And I know that's something that you talk about a lot. Communicate better. It allows you to collaborate better. And collaboration is so important because
Mhm.
what is a marriage except for collaboration, right?
Absolutely.
It's like a business merger. And so, because it is a merger, having being able to have the conversation on how the money merges or how the money separates from you, because you have two different ideas of that. And so, it starts with, so I say that power couples come out of financial therapy. It's just a saying that I say, not a financial therapy association saying. But the way that happens is for them to be both powerful themselves. And so you build some awareness on your strengths and challenges. And then you look at the couple. Okay, so now that we know our own strengths and challenges, then we bring that together. How can I help you? How
Mm.
can I serve you so that your challenges are not as much at a deficit? And then, what do you bring to the marriage? And then once we merge those and then we see what's still left, then we delegate that stuff, right? Because just because it's two people doesn't mean every challenge is going to be fixed between the two of us.
Right.
We hope so, maybe. But just in case it's not, we kind of look at those blind spots to see so what may come up and how can we delegate that or I don't use the word fix
Mhm.
because it means something is broken, but I'm a very strengths based and positive therapist. So how do we create what we're really looking for?
I love
And
it.
and that's, yeah, that's the hard part. How do we create what we're looking for? And that's why the third party comes in.
Well, it makes sense, if we want to get in good shape, we meet up with a fitness coach, or if
Hmm.
we want to get right with our money, we meet with a financial advisor. Why not have this combination with your marriage, where you can
Yeah.
grow your wellness both emotionally and financially with somebody as a third party? So that makes a ton of sense. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe the typical clients you're meeting with, and what type of situation where they would want to meet with a financial therapist?
Yes, I'm glad we're talking about that because I think that people believe, especially when it comes to financial therapy, that that's because you don't have enough money. And it
Mm.
actually is the opposite because if you don't have enough money, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not even really talking about money yet because survival is what we're talking
Right.
about, right? If you
Mm.
don't have enough money. And so if the clients that I see, and I typically, um, my office is in a affluent area of Georgia,
Mm.
and so most of my clients I have money. That's not the issue. They're not worried about what's coming in. They got the earn part of the money cycle down, and I define the money cycle as earn, grow, protect, gift, and enjoy your money. Most of the clients that I see are trying to navigate the money cycle, but having some arguments or just disputes. It doesn't necessarily have to be, drop down fights where they're yelling at each other, but just they're divided and they're trying to get on the same page. Now, here's another thing. Because I am a therapist, I often run into anxiety and trauma, PTSD. I'm a trauma therapist. That is my trade. That's what I was
Mhm.
trained to do. So a lot of times they come to me because there is anxiety or trauma in the relationship, and we find that money is causing that anxiety.
Hmm.
So it doesn't always work that they're like, hey, here's our money challenge, can you help us solve it, right?
Sure.
Sometimes it's like, hey, I got this feeling, I had a panic attack, or I'm anxious, or we've lost everything before, we gained it back and I'm afraid we're going to do it again. Like something like that could happen, and that's how we get to the money conversation. But if I had to describe my typical client or patient, it is a man or woman. I see probably 60% women, 40% men at
Hmm.
some when it comes to money. Now the other side of therapy, surprisingly, see 60% men, 40% women. I see a lot of men about anger, and I also see a lot of men about their idea of prosperity. And that has surprised me because I didn't expect
Hmm.
that that would be what my practice would look like. But I see a lot of men around anger and prosperity, and actually those two go together because I think men are in society. What we do to men is we tell them that there's only one emotion that they're allowed to feel, and that's anger,
Hmm.
and then the rest, they're punks.
Yeah.
They're all these bad names, right? We can't even say them
Hmm.
because it's a family show. But if they don't, but if they don't, um, if they feel anger, that's okay. They can express that one, but all the other emotions, they can't.
Hmm.
Right. And what about confusion, though? That's not fair that men are not allowed to be confused. And that's the one that I find a lot that they come to see about is help me find some clarity around this area of my life because I want to be happy. And I was told that money couldn't buy happiness, but then I went after the money anyway. And so, because I thought they were wrong, and I'm confused. And then they come to Kiné, and I say, no, you're right. Money can buy happiness. I'll show you. You just have to know what makes you happy.
So you're connecting the money side of things with the happiness side of things. It's maybe people you're describing somebody in this prosperity situation. Maybe they're making so much money, but they are not controlling it in a way to make themselves happy. Am I getting
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And you started to talk about men getting a little angry and confusing this prosperity thing. Um, where does that come from for men? So we're going down this path of what we think success is, and then we're misguided along the way. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so a couple of things happen. Starting out very young. Now, let me say this. So we get our money beliefs in place. 85% of our money beliefs are in place by age 3 and 95 by age 15. At that same time, we're also getting our love beliefs. So love beliefs are set in place by age 3. So, and about, I would say about the same, about 85%. So there's not much room for us to learn much more after age 3 about how we are supposed to be loved or how we're supposed to handle money. So those two get implanted in us very early, way before we get our first paycheck, way before we fall in love, right? So way before any of this stuff happens, we set in our brains how we're supposed to behave. Now, what happens is for ladies, we're taught express yourself, tell us how you feel, right? And so, women, we get in touch with our feelings. Also, we have friends along the way that will ask us, well, how does that feel? Well, you must be really upset. Well, let me give you a hug, right? That is happening in our lives. Well, as men grow up, it's not express your feelings. It's like, what are you crying about? Stop that crying. That's for girls,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they learn very early that it's not okay for me to feel. And I don't even want to feel actually because it hurts sometimes, right? But for ladies, we're taught it hurts, but that's okay because it's supposed to hurt and we'll talk about it and you'll get over it, right? But men don't have that outlet. And so they've been holding their feelings in, holding their feelings, and all the feelings didn't have to be hurtful, but they even hold some of the good feelings in too. And I have the statement that lack of self-expression leads to depression. And it may not be, you're depressed in bed, you can't get out the bed. It's a depression where you can't express yourself, you're not being authentic. So if you're not being authentic, then and you can't express yourself right, here's how you do it. Oh, I'll take my money and I'll express myself. I'll buy you things and then you'll love me, right? Because I can't tell you how much I love you. Now, I'm not saying across the board, no man has ever expressed their love, because my brother is one of the most expressive people you will ever meet. I mean, he hugs his friends. Like, he sees them like, man, I love you, man. Come here. Like, I ain't seen you in so long. Like, he is just very expressive and he has no problem expressing his feelings. But my mom fostered that in us. Now,
Mm-hmm.
not every man gets that. They don't get that. And so they're taught anger is the only one. So they suppress all the emotions, and nothing can be suppressed for very long. We already know that. Then it becomes like a volcano and it all comes out. He has no idea what any of this is. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling things. It must be anger because that is the only emotion I'm able to feel, right? Could be frustration, could just be irritation, could just be confusion, could actually be love, but I'm not allowed to express love. I'm on express anger. So here you go. When I yell at you, that means I love you. I wouldn't be so hard on you if I didn't love you. All of that.
What do you think can change in society to help men, let their guard down a little bit, to be more emotional, to be more communicative?
So there's a couple of things. One is there's no right and wrong. I think what happens in society, we're so stuck on right and wrong. And right and wrong gets us in trouble because there really is no right. There is no wrong. It's just the way you do it, Andy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the way that I do it, right? It's your preference, Andy, and it's my preference.
Right.
And so we've taught men that they have to be right, right? They have to know everything. They have to take care of everything. Women, we lean on men. We're like, hey, you're supposed to get this right. You know, fix it, right? And he's like, well, I don't have the answers. I don't know what that answer is, but together we could explore it and figure it out. And I'll lead us in this exploration, but I don't know, right? And because he's told that he has to know, but he's also told that he can't be wrong, he has to build up this guard of I know everything, and I'm on, and when I don't, I'll get angry enough for us to both feel it. So yeah, I think what we could do to help men is to cut out the whole right and wrong thing. There's no right and wrong. And then also, we're all allowed to feel whatever we're feeling. We just have to understand how to express it. So as early as possible, talk to. And my mom she parents like a therapist. She's not a therapist, but one of the things that she would always do with us is she said, well, tell me about what you were thinking when you did that. And as a kid, the answer, I don't know. And she wouldn't let us get away with that.
Hmm.
She's like, no, you do. Let's go deeper, like explore it. And then like, well, maybe I was thinking it would be fun. Yeah, you probably were thinking it would be fun. Was it fun? Well, at first, until I got caught, right? But she allowed us to express that. And if we allow men to express that, where he could just say, well, I thought it would feel good. And it did for a minute, but then I actually felt bad on my own before I even got caught. And then I did it again because all my other friends were doing it and they said it was supposed to feel good and it didn't feel good, even though they said it would. So I said, maybe I was doing it wrong, right? And so I'm going to try it again. Oh, and then I got caught. Right. And so the thing that happens with men, and I'm giving this, I put the responsibility on society first, and I
Sure.
put the responsibility on women first. But this is the third responsibility goes to men.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have got to hold each other accountable. You guys got to start having real authentic conversations with each other. And not, again, not that every man isn't. Some men are. Like I said, my brother is who I know for sure does it. And maybe you, the conversations that you have, you don't have to go deep because I know men sometimes say, well, that's his business and I don't want to get into it. Right. Or I don't want to offend him and make him think he's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if I correct you, then it's wrong. What you do with your money, if I correct you, then it's wrong, right? No, no, no. I'm just giving you another perspective. And so if men go to each other with a different perspective, let's explore the other options. That's it. That's all. Let's explore the other options. And that is where the conversation, because two men having that conversation is different than a man and a woman. So I can tell my man whatever I want to tell him, and he's going to think, well, you don't understand because you're a woman.
I'm laughing because I agree with you. I know the exact situation that you're in because I think that's incredible. I think what you just talked about is could be extremely powerful, not only for just individual marriages, but for this country in general. I think
Yes.
a lot of unnecessary anger or a lot of
Hmm.
um, resolutions could happen just through further conversation and exploration of emotions and where people
Yeah.
are. I mean, I guess we'll bring it back to marriage because I'm getting a little high there. But so with marriage, conversations like this, it sounds like that's when people maybe are coming in for the conversations maybe after the explosion you talked about, or the explosion maybe happens in your office. Is that when people are starting to make their way and having conversations with you?
Yes, both. So a lot of times they do wait until it's not too late, but until it's just really, really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of reasons why. With society, there's part of society that values therapy
Yeah.
or values counsel, period.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we kind of live in a do it yourself kind of society right now. It didn't used to be like that in the past, but right now we're in a very do it yourself society. And the reason is because of trust. We don't trust each other anymore. Some of that is valid because there are some snakes out there. So part of it is trust. So they're like, we're not going to therapy because what is that lady going to tell us that we don't already know ourselves, right? Or we can't Google and find out.
Or ask Alexa. Alexa, how do I solve
Right.
my marriage?
So you go to Alexa, the first therapist you get first, right? And she'll probably throw out some things. I mean, Alexa's pretty smart. She'll probably throw out some things. She probably has some books and some blogs in her database that she could give you that you could start reading and work on, right? And then you have church. That's the other side. So then people believe, well, maybe we could just solve it in our church, right? And it could be true because that could be a way for it to work. But if your pastor or whoever you go and talk to doesn't have the background to see the anxiety or to see the history, what I find a lot is trauma because love is sometimes expressed through what we've been through in the past. And when I say sometimes, that's only because I don't have the numbers in front of me. But really, if I'm really honest, it's always expressed by our past,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's just me being honest, not me being a therapist, because therapists like numbers. So because I don't have real statistics, I
Especially
won't.
financial therapists.
So because I don't have real statistics, I won't, go too far down that. But what happens is our love is expressed by our past, the way we interpret it. And at 3 years old, we're not really good interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
We take in all this information, and since because we establish the way that we're supposed to love so early in our life, we were learning to walk, we were learning to talk, we were learning to love, we
Mm-hmm.
were learning how we should create or spend money. And when I say create, that's earning, but I use the word create more than earn because there is this idea that we have to work hard for our money. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because what happens is couples have two different histories. Even if they were raised by the same person, they would have two different histories. But they weren't. They were raised by two different people. Sometimes they weren't raised by people at all,
Mm-hmm.
basic, and
Yeah.
I'm saying that figuratively,
Sure.
but the caretaker may not even love them or show them any love. And so how are they expected to come into a relationship and be able to love? But we don't give our partners credit for that. We don't give our partners credit for the fact that I never learned to love. I'm trying right now, but you're not helping.
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when they come into my office, it's really about how they are expressing their love. And for some men, that might be angry. I don't know how, so I get angry. I'm confused. I can't seem to, um, I can't seem to please her,
Hmm.
right? And women seem very complex, and they're not. They're really simple. It's just that you have to study out the book, the right book, right? Because if you're trying to figure out how to do heart surgery and you're studying a brain surgery book, you're going to get it wrong, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I just help men find the right book. Get in the right book, man. You're in the wrong book. And
I
so
would agree that I still have, I've been married 8 years. I still have not solved the Book of Nicole. So I'm still working on that one.
yes.
Well, cool.
And
Well, let's talk about we've talked a little bit about how people come together for these conversations and what they might might be talking about, but let's talk about what sort of the outcomes or the goals of theirs. So you talk a lot about financial prosperity, and I think that's a lot
mhm.
of probably what you're trying to develop with these conversations. Can you talk about what financial prosperity means to you?
Personally, to me.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So I'm so used to talking about other people.
Well, in order to get the I guess the general thought of the conversation we're having together as the interview, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what it means to you, because I'm sure that's what you try to bring across in your conversations with your clients.
So my idea of prosperity, what I normally ask people is, how do you want to show up in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have this affirmation about how I want to show up in the world. And so that is, I am happily married, highly paid, highly sought after, international speaker, New York Times bestselling author, millionaire therapist, in excellent health. I get paid for being me. My life is very easy. So if you listen to that paragraph, prosperity to me means being in a committed relationship. That is a part of prosperity to me. Wasn't always, but it is now. Being a New York Times bestselling author, and the reason is because I am an author, and having the highest award for doing that is important to me. Being a sought after speaker is important to me because I feel like I have a message that can help relieve some of the pain in the world. Not out of vanity, don't hire me
Sure.
as a speaker just because I like to hear myself talk, but I really do have a solution to some of the pain in the world. And so being highly sought after for me means that we actually solve a problem rather than just keep talking about the problem, because that is a pet peeve of mine. And then as a therapist, I do plan to be the premier financial therapist. There are other therapists that specialize in finances. I'm not the only one, but I do want to be the leader in that. And so prosperity for me is about knowing what's important to you, what value you want to add to the world, what comes easy to you, and maybe even knowing your challenges too. And so the way that I do that is with patients is to get down to three words. And my three words are autonomy, creativity, and generosity. So autonomy, because I love to make my own schedule. If you tell me, hey, just do it whenever you get a chance, I'm going to do it right now. But if you tell me, go do this right now, I'm like, what? I'll do it when I get ready. So it's so wrong, but I know myself, know thyself, right? So, and then creativity, whatever it is whatever value I bring to the world, it will come out of me being creative, solving a problem. And I don't even really like the word problem. I usually use the word challenge because it's a negative word, and I'm a strength-based therapist. Also, generosity. So my core value is generosity, love to give and receive, but I have been in my past a much better giver than I was a receiver. Right now I'm working on receiving, but generosity is still a core value of mine.
So
And
those are the
many of
three areas you're working on, not only personally but with your clients as well. Is that right?
well, it goes like this. The first question that I just answered was, how do I want to show up in the world?
Mm-hmm.
That is the first question I ask every patient, and I take myself out of it because my values are not important. So being a millionaire may not be important to my client, right? And so we're not talking about being a millionaire then. We're talking about being a thousandaire
Mm-hmm.
or even a hundredaire, whatever is important to them, right? So first question I ask, the reason why I ask that is so that I can get in line with their values.
Mm.
Because I don't want to change their world. The way they want to show up is how they want to show up. And they know deep in their heart, in your gut, that's when you really know how you want to show up. Even if you're not doing it yet, you know in your gut. And so I want to get down there in their gut with them and find out what that is. And then I'm leading them there. And then I just get them on the path. And then I'm like, okay, bye. Can't wait to see you at the top, kind of like that. But really helping them create that path and then sending them off on that path because I don't want to be there. They can always come back, of course, especially if they get off the path. But creating that path to happiness is my job, helping them create that path and then getting them on it and then just seeing them along their way.
And so you're individually working with the clients in those areas, and then with regard to the marriage and the partnership, it sounds like you're trying to fix it at the core first, the individual person, finding what's important to them, and then
Yep.
finding the way the synchronicity of the marriage after that point, after they're
hmm
fixing themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you'll hear me talk about a lot is the Prosperity Club.
Hmm.
And the Prosperity Club is where you as a person find your values around money and really define what's important to you. And then I move them to the marriage money mission. And that is when as a couple, you decide your values. So I come into the marriage with a value. Right. And then I find out my husband's value. And then together we determine what the mission is for the family. Now, here's the thing. Early on, we should have looked to see if our values were aligned. We don't always do that though. We're like, oh, we have fun together. We have great sex. We have, this. We both want children.
Right.
It was not about you both wanting children. How do you plan to raise those children? Right. And so though if those conversations haven't been had, then that's the conversation we have in therapy.
Hmm.
So what are your values? And the conversations, the arguments that you're having are value arguments a lot of times. Well, this is what I value. And you are telling me that my value is wrong. And I value this and I value that. And so what I'm doing is finding out what their core values are. Like I said, autonomy, creativity, generosity for me, right? And so if I'm not allowed to have some freedom, then you're not going to get a happy Kiné, no matter what. You're not going to get a happy Kiné. You can bring all the money you want, and if I don't have any freedom, I'm still going to be irritated through this. And so, like you said, we look at the core of the person first. How do we get you happy? And then you bring that happiness to the marriage. How do we then, if you got bring two happy people together, then you have the happiest marriage.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. And if you find, you said at the beginning of the relationship, it would have been great if we aligned our values and then said, hey, let's march forward together in this marriage. What if you find 8, 10, 12 years later that your values don't align? How do you mitigate that?
So if your values don't align, but you're still committed to the marriage, that's the important part of
Yeah.
that sentence. So if your values don't align and you want out, then we can still talk and we find out how do we do that in the most amicable way? How do we do that so we're not because that right or wrong starts to create divisiveness, and the more divisiveness that comes up, the more you hate each other and the more you want to hurt each other. And so my job then is to show you how to part or uncouple, part in the most amicable way. You can still love each other and not be together.
Hmm.
And that is okay. And I think society tells us that divorce is because one person is right and one person is wrong. And it's just not true. You're just different and your values are not the same. Now, if you say our values are different and we are committed to this marriage, we have a plan, we have children, and we don't want our early mistake to affect them,
Hmm.
then you get on the same page as how you fall in love with the plan. You may not be in love with your partner, but you've got to fall in love with that plan and then reignite that love as often as possible. Now, if you're in this marriage, because society also says now, it used to be back in the day, love didn't have anything to do with marriage. It was about an arrangement, right?
Hmm.
And then love got put in, and then people were like, well, then the fairy tale came, and it was like, oh no, he didn't come on a white horse. This must not be my husband, right? So get the fairy tale away first. Let's work on getting the fairy tale away. If you fall in love with the plan and you understand that the plan is not a blockbuster movie, right? It is not that. It's a real freaking life. So let go of that fairy tale movie thing that you had going on
Mhm.
and see what's really what you have. Look at what you have together. Where do you work? What values do align? Now, again, I think what we have been taught to do is to look at the negative. Let's look at the negative. And it's not our fault. Human beings are wired that way because the brain needs you to see the negative so you can stay alive, right? Because that's a saber-tooth tiger, not a butterfly. Run, right? If you go, oh, pretty little cat, let me pet that saber-tooth tiger, right? No, that's not going to keep you alive. You have got to assume that that saber-tooth tiger is out to kill you, out to eat you, and so you've got to run. So our brains are still working off our primitive caveman way of thinking. Our hearts, however, are speeded down the evolution chain and way too far ahead, and so they're conflicting. The heart and the brain are conflicting, and the gut knows. The gut knows, but we don't follow our guts. We follow our brains, and the brain says that man is going to hurt you, so protect yourself. We put our guard and we never let them down because he hurt us once, he'll hurt us again, rather than saying that is that man's behavior, not who that man is at the core. So going back to the values, you look at that man's values, you look at that woman's values, and you see who she is. Her values are important, whether they're like mine or not. They're important to her, and let me find out why this value is important to her. So here's the last point. It's a very long answer to your question, but curiosity. Never lose that curiosity. If you can fall in love with the plan, you can understand your partner's values through curiosity. Those two can keep you together even when the love is not there. And I interview people on my podcast who have been together for 40 and 50 years, and the love is not always there.
Yeah.
So you've got to fall in love with the plan and you've got to be curious. And that will keep you in that marriage if you find that you don't have the same values. Now, if you have the same values, it's a lot easier, right? You don't need as much counseling. You may just need a little counseling on how to bring your ideas of how to express those values together.
Mhm.
But you don't actually need to resolve. There's nothing to resolve. You're just wondering how to evolve together because you've been doing separately. Now you need to know how you do it together.
I love that. Well, whether you feel you need it or you don't need counseling, I feel like investigating and meeting with somebody like yourself can be very helpful. Nicole and I have done that. It's just great to have a third party that
Yeah.
is there to, just walk along the conversations that you're not able to have together because they're not brought up in certain ways. Being able to talk about the past, like you talked about, and finding out how we can develop ourselves at the core. I'd highly recommend it for a lot of people. I think it's very helpful for the marriage. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the budget parties that you talk about, I've heard you talk about your budget parties. We have Money Day in our land, in Prosperity Land. And so but also you might even have a day where you just get to vent, right? And I
Absolutely.
don't know what you call it. You call it whatever you like. But just go ahead and vent and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And you got to give each other space to do that because that's what happens in therapy, really, where the person vents. Well, he does this and she does that, and I want to do this, blah, 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 right? You just vent. And so if you allow your partner to do that without taking it personally, then it'll be a much easier marriage. I'm not saying marriage is easy. I'm saying it's easier when you can allow your partner to express themselves and say, this is not about me, this is about her, right? It's not about me, this is about him. Let him say how he feels. Let her say how he or she feels, right? And then just listen and then be curious again, okay? And then for men, there's no fix. Sometimes you don't have to fix it just yet
Keep reminding
because
me.
right, I'm the same way. Actually, I'm the same way. I'm similar to men in that way, that if you bring me a challenge, I'm like, oh, we must be looking for solutions here. The only reason we're talking about this, right? But understand for women, sometimes it is a let's just talk about it. Let's just get it out there, and then we can somehow come back to it and fix it, right, or solve it. But sometimes you just need to vent, and that's a new concept for men and me. So
Yeah, you just summarized the first 3 years of my marriage. I didn't get it. I was like, what? What? No, no, no. She's talking to me about something that's very important. I have to solve it.
right,
Right? That's what I'm
exactly.
supposed to
Right.
do. Why is
She's
she
in
getting
pain. I
mad?
gotta relieve the pain.
Well, tell us a little bit about this Prosperity Club and where people can learn more about it.
So the Prosperity Club is a community and it's also a course. So it's a course that helps you get on your idea of prosperity, kind of create and define. Because some people may have some idea like I do, but define it. So it helps you define your idea of prosperity. There are courses in there that come every month to help you create your prosperity plan. So it's an annual membership that you'll get courses each month that each month you'll get a little bit closer and a little bit closer to your prosperity plan. So I kind of walk you through how to create a prosperity plan. And then you also have the community. So there's a Facebook group. You can go to kinecorder.com/Facebook. And the Facebook group is where you can interact with me. You can interact with other people. So you can talk to another person or a couple and say, hey, has anybody dealt with this? Or what are your ideas around this? Hey, we're working on this. Anybody got any ideas? And so you can do that. But there are also videos and stuff in there that give you tips and tools and resources on how to create or continue on your prosperity path.
I love it. I love it. Well, I will
Yeah.
definitely include all that information in the show notes. And the best place for people to find you if they want to connect, where's that?
So I'll say this. One thing that I know that happens a lot of times people want to take the money mentality quiz and understand their money mentality. And we didn't talk a lot about it here on this show, but that's a really great way to help couples understand each other financially is to take the money mentality quiz and then discuss their strengths and weaknesses around money. So you can go to kinecorder.com/money dash quiz and take the money mentality quiz. Doesn't mean you opting into anything, you're just taking the quiz. And so if you do want to opt into something, then go to the Facebook page, kinecorder.com/Facebook. And that way you can opt in and we can talk more and you can get on that list and start to receive emails from me.
Excellent. And then the opportunity to open up and, not to explode into a volcano like some men do. Well,
Exactly.
I say that like I've never done it. Oh, I've definitely never
Of
done that
course
in my
not.
marriage,
No.
of course.
Oh.
Not me. No, no. Thank you so much for your time today, Kiné. I really
You're
appreciate you joining.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.